an original narrative, created especially for Shadows of Love. The spotlight found Lena as it always did, bathing her tired body in artificial warmth, while Dante Salvatore watched from the shadows, his glass untouched for the third hour. Her eyes never met his, not once in 67 nights, yet something in the careful precision of her movements told him she danced not for the men throwing bills at her feet, but for someone unseen beyond these walls. He'd built an empire on reading people's weaknesses, but hers was different. Not greed or fear or lust, but a quiet desperation that made her stronger than anyone in his world of calculated violence. Tonight, as a drunk patron grabbed for her ankle, Dante's hand tightened around his glass until his knuckles whitened. The first time in 15 years, he'd let emotion breach his carefully maintained control. Lena checked her watch as she hurried down the dimly lit hallway toward the dressing room. 20 minutes until her next set. Just enough time to call Mrs. Patel and check on Sophia. She's sleeping like an angel, the elderly neighbor assured her. Don't worry. But worry was all Lena knew these days. Worry about the rent due in 3 days. Worry about the pediatrician bill still unpaid. Worry that her 6-month-old daughter would somehow sense her mother danced in a place where men's eyes stripped her bare every night. She whispered, ending the call and leaning against the wall. The Diamond Lounge wasn't what she'd imagined for herself when she'd been studying business administration 3 years ago, before Marcus, before his promises, before he disappeared when she told him about the pregnancy, leaving nothing but debts and a broken lease. She applied lipstick with practiced precision, avoiding her own eyes in the mirror. The club was high-end, meaning the security actually kept the customers in line. The pay was decent, and the owner didn't expect extras from his dancers. It was the best of bad options when you had a baby and no degree. 5 minutes, Lena, the stage manager called. She slipped into her heels, straightened her spine, and became someone else. Not Lena Taylor, exhausted single mother. Not the scholarship student who'd had to drop out. Here, she was crystal, untouchable, confident, and worth every dollar they paid to watch her. The music pulsed as she stepped onto the stage, her movements fluid and precise. She'd learned to disconnect, to let her body work while her mind calculated how many more nights like this she'd need to cover next month's expenses. She never looked at their faces. They weren't people. They were dollar signs, except for one. The man who sat in the corner booth every night, who watched but never approached. The one the other dancers whispered about with nervous reverence. The one they called Mr. Salvatore. Dante Salvatore sipped his whiskey slowly, his dark eyes never leaving the stage. Around him, his men maintained a respectful distance, close enough to protect, far enough to give him privacy. The Diamond Lounge wasn't one of his businesses, but the owner paid his monthly protection fees without complaint, ensuring Dante's preferred booth remained vacant, regardless of how busy they were. Another drink, Mr. Salvatore? The waitress asked, her voice carefully neutral. He shook his head once, a barely perceptible movement. She retreated immediately. Dante wasn't here for the alcohol, or even the entertainment that captivated the other patrons. He was here for her, the dancer who moved with fluid grace, yet carried exhaustion in the corners of her eyes, the one who never smiled with genuine pleasure, only practiced charm. He'd first noticed her 3 months ago. Unlike the others who performed with calculated seduction, she danced with quiet dignity, as if she were somewhere else entirely. It intrigued him, that distance. In his world, people were transparent, motivated by greed, fear, or ambition, but she remained a mystery. His second-in-command, Marco, leaned closer. The meeting with the Colombians is confirmed for tomorrow. Dante nodded without shifting his gaze from the stage. Business could wait. For these few minutes each night, he allowed himself this strange, silent connection with a woman who didn't know he existed beyond being another wealthy man in an expensive suit. He watched her gather the bills from the stage with efficient movements, never lingering, never playing the games the other dancers used to encourage more tips. She performed, she collected, she disappeared, like clockwork. Tonight, however, something was different. Her movements were more mechanical, her eyes more distant. Something was wrong. And Dante Salvatore had built an empire on noticing details others missed. It happened during Lena's final set. A group of drunk businessmen had been growing rowdier by the hour, throwing money, but also comments that cut through the music. The bouncer had already warned them twice. As Lena finished her routine, one man lurched forward, grabbing her ankle. "Come home with me, sweetheart. I'll pay triple whatever you make here." She tried to pull away, maintaining her professional smile. "Please don't touch the dancers, sir. Don't be like that." His grip tightened. "Everyone knows why you're really here." Before the bouncer could intervene, movement flickered in Lena's peripheral vision. The man from the corner booth was suddenly there, his presence commanding instant attention. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Let go of her. 3 words, spoken quietly, yet the music seemed to dim around them. The drunk man looked up, recognition and fear washing over his face in rapid succession. "Mr. Salvatore, I didn't realize." "Now." The hand disappeared from her ankle. Lena stepped back, heart pounding. The man who had grabbed her was stammering apologies, suddenly sober. "We were just having fun. No disrespect intended." Dante Salvatore's face remained impassive. "Leave." The entire group scrambled to collect their jackets, nearly tripping over each other in their haste to exit. The club's atmosphere had changed completely. Conversations hushed, music seeming too loud in the sudden tension. Lena stood frozen on the stage, acutely aware that every eye in the establishment was watching this unexpected scene unfold. Dante turned to her, his dark eyes meeting hers directly for the first time. "Are you all right?" She managed a nod, surprised by the genuine concern in his question. "Good." He inclined his head slightly, then returned to his booth as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. The following evening, Lena arrived at the club to find the manager waiting for her, looking nervous. "Mr. Salvatore wants to speak with you," he said, adjusting his tie repeatedly, in his car, outside. A cold knot formed in her stomach. She'd heard enough about Dante Salvatore to be terrified. Whispers of his connections, his businesses both legitimate and otherwise. The way people fell silent when he entered a room. "What does he want?" she asked. The manager shrugged helplessly. "He doesn't explain himself, Lena. He asks, people do." Outside, a black Bentley idled by the curb. The driver opened the door as she approached. Dante Salvatore sat inside, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit. Up close, she noticed the details, the perfect tailoring, the subtle power in his posture, eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Taylor," he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. "Thank you for coming." She slid in cautiously. "Do I have a choice?" A faint smile touched his lips. Everyone has choices. Some are just more difficult than others. The car remained stationary, the privacy partition up. "I need an executive assistant," he said without preamble. "Someone organized, discreet, and intelligent. The position pays $85,000 annually, with benefits." Lena stared at him. "Why me? You don't know anything about me." "I know enough." His eyes held hers steadily. "You're supporting a child alone. You're overqualified for this club, and you have dignity, a rare quality." Her heart raced. That kind of money would change everything for Sophia. "Is this legal work?" she asked carefully. "Entirely. My legitimate businesses require legitimate management." Salvatore Tower rose 40 stories above the city, its glass exterior reflecting clouds and sky. Lena's heels clicked against marble as she followed Dante through the lobby, acutely aware of the security personnel who nodded respectfully as they passed. "My offices occupy the top 5 floors, Dante explained, his voice measured and calm. "You'll work directly with me on the 40th floor." The elevator required a key card and fingerprint. As they ascended, Lena tried to process how drastically her life had changed in 24 hours. Yesterday, she'd been a dancer struggling to make rent. Today, she stood beside one of the most powerful men in the city, wearing a conservative dress she'd purchased with the advance he'd provided. Mrs. Patel had agreed to continue watching Sophia during the day, with a substantial increase in payment that Lena could now afford. The elevator doors opened to reveal an elegantly appointed reception area, where a stern-looking woman sat behind a desk. "This is Mrs. Vega," Dante said. "She manages the office operations." The woman nodded coolly. "Welcome, Miss Taylor." Dante led her through double doors into a vast office with floor-to-ceiling windows. A large desk dominated one end, while a conference table and sitting area occupied the other. Everything spoke of understated wealth, no gold fixtures or ostentatious displays, just quality and precision. "Your desk is here." He indicated a workspace positioned outside his private office. "You'll handle my schedule, correspondence, and certain sensitive documents. Discretion is essential." Lena nodded, still overwhelmed. "I have 3 primary legitimate businesses," he continued. "Real estate development, import-export, and hospitality. You'll become familiar with all of them." What remained unspoken hung in the air between them. The other businesses, the ones that explained the armed men she'd noticed in the lobby. "Any questions?" he asked. "When do I start?" "You already have." Within a week, Lena learned the unwritten rules of Dante's world. Never ask about certain meetings marked only with initials in the calendar. Never acknowledge the men who sometimes arrived with tense expressions and left looking relieved. Or sometimes didn't leave at all, instead being escorted to the elevator that led to floors she didn't have access to. Never mention the occasional bruised knuckles Dante sometimes returned with after unexplained absences. Most importantly, never, ever interrupt when Marco, his second-in-command, closed the office door for private conversations. In return, she discovered unexpected benefits. Dante was unfailingly professional. He never raised his voice, never made inappropriate comments, and valued efficiency above all else. When she reorganized his filing system, he simply nodded in approval and increased her salary by 10%. "You've improved productivity," he stated, as if it were a simple calculation rather than a gesture of appreciation. The other employees maintained a respectful distance, but she gradually earned their cautious acceptance. Mrs. Vega even smiled at her on the 10th day, a brief, tight expression that nonetheless felt like a significant victory. Dante himself remained an enigma. Sometimes she would look up to find him watching her with an unreadable expression. Other times, days would pass with minimal interaction beyond professional necessities. She told herself it didn't matter. The job was transforming her life. She'd moved to a safer apartment, opened a savings account for Sophia's education, and even begun researching online courses to complete her degree. If the cost was working for a man whose power made her both nervous and fascinated, it seemed a reasonable exchange. 1 month into her employment, Lena was organizing documents in Dante's office while he attended a meeting downstairs. As she sorted through a stack of papers, she knocked over a folder, scattering photographs across the desk. She quickly gathered them, then froze. Among the surveillance photos was a face she knew intimately. Marcus Reynolds, the man who had promised to love her forever, then vanished when she told him about their child. In the photo, he looked different, expensive haircut, designer clothes, standing beside a luxury car. Nothing like the struggling graduate student he'd claimed to be when they met. Her hands trembled as she examined the other photos. Marcus with various men in suits. Marcus entering buildings with armed security. Marcus at what appeared to be a high-stakes poker game. And most shocking, a document with his real name, Marco Ricci. Find something interesting. Lena jumped, the photos slipping from her fingers. Dante stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I knocked over the folder and recognized him." "It wasn't a question," she nodded, unable to lie. "He's my daughter's father." Something dangerous flashed in Dante's eyes. "Marco Ricci is your child's father. I knew him as Marcus Reynolds," she explained, heart racing. "He disappeared when I told him I was pregnant." Dante approached slowly, gathering the photos with deliberate movements. "Ricci worked for me 3 years ago. He stole $2 million in sensitive information, then disappeared. We've been tracking him since." The implications hit her like a physical blow. Her connection to Marcus, to Marco, suddenly explained Dante's interest in her, why he'd offered her the job. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew who I was all along." His silence was confirmation enough. "Did you think I was involved?" Her voice strengthened with indignation. "That I helped him. Initially, it was a possibility, and now I know better." 2 days after the photo revelation, Lena maintained strict professionalism, despite the tension between them. If Dante had hired her to monitor her connection to Marco Ricci, she would give him no reason to doubt her integrity. She was reviewing contracts when Dante's private line rang. The one only 5 people had the number to. "Salvatore Tower," she answered. "The Henderson deal is compromised," a man's voice said urgently. "Someone leaked the terms to Castellano. They're moving to undercut us right now." The Henderson deal was Dante's largest legitimate real estate development, a $50 million project that would revitalize an abandoned waterfront district. Losing it would be catastrophic. "Mr. Salvatore is unavailable," she said, remembering he was in a meeting across town. "Who's calling?" "James Whitaker, his attorney." "This can't wait. Castellano is meeting with Henderson in 30 minutes. Lena made a split-second decision. "Send me the details." When the documents arrived, she recognized the vulnerability immediately. A clause regarding environmental remediation that Castellano could exploit. She called Henderson's office directly. "This is Lena Taylor, Mr. Salvatore's executive assistant. There's been a misunderstanding regarding Section 5.3 of our proposal." By the time Dante returned, she had not only prevented Castellano's intervention, but had secured Henderson's verbal commitment to sign with Salvatore Developments exclusively. Dante listened silently as she explained what had happened. "You exceeded your authority," he said finally. Lena met his gaze steadily. "Yes, sir." "You negotiated terms without consultation." "Yes, sir." "You committed my company to specific deliverables." She nodded, preparing for dismissal. Instead, Dante did something she'd never seen before. He smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his severe features. "And you saved a $50 million deal in the process." He studied her with new appreciation. "Well done, Lena." Something shifted between them that day, a foundation of trust where only suspicion had existed before. Rain lashed against the windows as Lena finished the quarterly reports. It was nearly midnight, and the office stood empty except for her and Dante, who was on a call in his private office. When he emerged, he looked at his watch with surprise. "You should have gone home hours ago." "I wanted to finish these," she said, gathering her things. "The board meeting is tomorrow." Dante nodded, then glanced at the downpour outside. "I'll drive you home." In the 3 months she'd worked for him, he'd never made such an offer. "That's not necessary. It's midnight and flooding. I insist." The Bentley moved smoothly through deserted streets, windshield wipers fighting the deluge. Inside, the silence felt different than their usual professional distance. More intimate, more dangerous. "How is your daughter?" he asked unexpectedly. "Sophia's good. Growing fast." Lena smiled, thinking of her baby's recent attempts to crawl. "She's with Mrs. Patel tonight." Lightning illuminated his profile, strong jaw, straight nose, eyes focused on the road. In this enclosed space, she couldn't ignore the magnetic pull she'd been denying for weeks. "I need to tell you something," she said suddenly, the words escaping before she could reconsider. "About Marco." Dante's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Go on." "When I met him, I was in my final year of business school. He said he was getting his MBA. The rain drummed harder as she continued. "He was charming, attentive. I thought it was love." She described how Marco had gradually borrowed money, claiming temporary financial problems. How he'd moved into her apartment, then disappeared after learning about the pregnancy, taking her savings and leaving her with his debts. "I had to drop out with 1 semester left," she finished. "I had no family to help, no safety net." Dante remained silent for several moments. "You never suspected his real identity?" "Never. I thought he was just another coward running from responsibility." She looked directly at him. "I would never have protected him if I'd known what he'd done to you." The car stopped at a red light. In the crimson glow, his eyes met hers. "I believe you," he said quietly. 3 simple words that somehow changed everything. A week after their rainy drive, Lena received a call from her landlord. The building had been purchased by a new owner, who was offering tenants generous relocation packages. When she mentioned it to Dante, his expression remained neutral. "Is that so?" That evening, he handed her an envelope. Inside were keys and an address in one of the city's safest neighborhoods. "What is?" she asked, though she already suspected. "A more suitable apartment for you and Sophia," he said. his tone making it clear this wasn't charity, but a business transaction. 3 bedrooms, secure building, proximity to good schools. Consider it part of your compensation package. She wanted to refuse. To maintain the professional boundaries that kept their relationship simple. But she thought of Sophia, of the drug deals she'd witnessed in her current building stairwell, of the mold she couldn't get the landlord to address. "Thank you," she said finally. "I'll pay rent, of course. The property belongs to Salvatore Holdings. You'll pay a fair market rate." She moved that weekend. The apartment was beautiful, hardwood floors, large windows, modern appliances, and a nursery, already equipped with a crib and changing table. "I took the liberty of having it prepared," Dante explained when he stopped by to ensure everything met his standards. He stood awkwardly in the doorway of the nursery, looking strangely out of place among the soft colors and stuffed animals. Sophia, now 8 months old, watched him curiously from Lena's arms. "Would you like to hold her?" Lena asked impulsively. Something like panic flickered across his face. "I don't think. She doesn't bite. Well, not hard anyway." Tentatively, Dante took the baby. His large hands cradled her with surprising gentleness. Sophia reached up, patting his cheek with chubby fingers. For the first time since she'd known him, Dante Salvatore looked completely defenseless. Working late became their unspoken routine. After normal business hours, when the office emptied and the city lights came on, a different atmosphere settled between them. Professional lines blurred in subtle ways. Jackets removed, sleeves rolled up, conversations extending beyond business matters. Lena learned that Dante had built his empire from nothing, that he spoke 4 languages, that he preferred Bach to Mozart. He discovered her passion for economics, her dream of finishing her degree, her talent for seeing patterns in data that others missed. They never acknowledged the electricity that charged the air when they worked side by side, reviewing documents at the conference table, their hands occasionally brushing. Never mentioned how their eyes would meet and hold, for a beat too long before one of them would look away. One evening, as they reviewed acquisition proposals, Dante loosened his tie with a sigh. "You should go home to Sophia," he said, though his tone suggested he didn't want her to leave. "Mrs. Patel is staying over tonight." Lied, not looking up from the spreadsheet. "Sophia's fine." He moved behind her chair, leaning down to examine the numbers she was highlighting. His cologne, subtle, expensive, enveloped her. She could feel his breath against her hair. "This projection seems optimistic," he murmured, reaching past her to point at the screen. His arm brushed her shoulder. Neither of them moved for a moment that stretched painfully between them. Dante straightened first, putting distance between them. "I apologize." "For what?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "For keeping you so late." But they both knew that wasn't what required apology. What remained dangerous was the way they'd begun to need these evenings, these moments when they existed in a world between professional and personal, neither crossing the line, but both acutely aware of its presence. A line that grew thinner every day. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Dante was reviewing contracts, while Lena organized his schedule for an upcoming business trip. The office was quiet, except for the occasional sound of papers shuffling and keys tapping. Reaching for his water glass, Dante knocked it over. The crystal shattered against the marble-topped desk, sending shards across the surface. "Let me," Lena said, moving quickly to help. "It's fine," he began, but she was already gathering the larger pieces. Their hands collided as they both reached for the same fragment. Dante pulled back sharply, but not before a jagged edge sliced across his palm. Blood welled immediately, a bright line against his skin. "You're hurt," Lena said, taking his hand without thinking. "Let me see." The cut wasn't deep, but bled freely. She pressed her handkerchief against it, aware that this was the first time they had truly touched, skin to skin. Her fingers wrapped around his wrist, his blood staining the white cotton. Neither spoke as she applied pressure to the wound. The office seemed suddenly too warm, too small to contain whatever was happening between them. When she finally looked up, Dante was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. His usual control had slipped, revealing something raw and hungry beneath. "Lena," he said, her name almost a question. Before she could respond, his phone rang, the private line that never brought good news. The moment shattered like the glass on his desk. He answered the call, his expression closing off, becoming the Dante Salvatore the world knew and feared. But something had changed irrevocably between them. The photographs arrived in a plain manila envelope marked confidential. Dante opened them, while Lena was organizing files nearby. His sharp intake of breath made her turn. "What is it?" Wordlessly, he pushed the photos toward her. Marco Ricci, the man she had known as Marcus, smiling beside a pregnant woman outside an obstetrician's office in Miami. The timestamp showed they were taken 3 days ago. "He's using the name David Mercer now," Dante said, his voice dangerously calm. "Living in a beachfront property purchased with cash. Apparently expecting another child." Lena stared at the images, a strange numbness spreading through her. The man who had abandoned her and Sophia had simply started over. New name, new woman, new baby. "The woman," she managed to ask, "does she know?" "Unlikely. Our sources indicate she comes from a wealthy family. He's playing the same game. Different target." Dante's phone buzzed with a text. He checked it, his expression hardening further. "We've confirmed his location. Marco's security is minimal. He thinks he's safe." His eyes met hers, cold and determined. "I'm going to Miami tonight." The implications were clear. This wasn't a business trip. "What will you do?" she asked, though she already knew. What should have been done 3 years ago. His voice was flat, emotionless. "He betrayed me, stole from me. Then he did the same to you." Lena thought of Sophia, of the woman in the photo, whose smile showed she had no idea who she was really with, of the unborn child, who would be just as innocent as her own daughter. "And what happens to her?" Lena nodded toward the pregnant woman. "To their baby?" Something flickered in Dante's eyes, the first hesitation she'd ever seen in him. Collateral damage can't always be avoided in these matters. Dante paced his office like a caged predator, energy radiating from him in dangerous waves. Lena had never seen him like this. Control fractured, composure abandoned. This was the man others feared, the one whispered about in nervous tones. "He's mocking me," Dante said, voice tight with rage. "Living openly, starting a family, enjoying the money he stole. Did you know what he took from me? Wasn't just money." Lena shook her head, standing her ground despite his volatility. "The information he sold got 3 of my men killed." His fist came down on the desk. "Good men with families, loyal men who trusted me to protect them." Outside, a storm had gathered, thunder punctuating his words as rain lashed against the windows. "This ends tonight. The jet is fueled and waiting." He grabbed his phone, barking orders to Marco. "Have the team ready in 30 minutes. Lena stepped forward, placing herself between Dante and the door. "And then what?" "You kill him. His pregnant girlfriend becomes collateral damage. Another child grows up without a father. Move, Lena." His voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. "No." She stood firm, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "I know what he deserves. Believe me, I understand wanting him to pay. But this is justice in my world, your world." She took a breath. "Is that all there is for you now? Just your world, with its rules and vengeance and blood?" Lightning illuminated the office, casting harsh shadows across his features. For a moment, she glimpsed something beneath his anger, a profound weariness, a man trapped by the empire he'd built. "What would you have me do?" he demanded. "Let him go again." "No," she said quietly. "I'm asking you to find another way." They faced each other across the storm-darkened office, the air between them charged with more than the lightning outside. Lena had never challenged Dante before. No one did. Yet here she stood, blocking his path, asking the impossible. "What other way?" he asked, his voice low. "Explain to me how justice works in your world, Lena." "Report him to the authorities," she suggested. "You must have evidence of his crimes. Let him face legal consequences. The legal system." His laugh was cold. "Where he might serve a few years, if convicted at all. Where his lawyers would find technicalities, loopholes. Then take everything from him," she countered. "You have resources, influence. Make sure he loses his new identity, his money, his comfort. Make him start over with nothing, like he forced me to do." Thunder crashed outside, and for a moment, the power flickered. "Why?" Dante demanded. Why show mercy to a man who showed none to you, who abandoned his own child? Lena stepped closer, close enough to see the battle raging behind his eyes. Not for him, she said softly. For you. His expression shifted. Confusion breaking through anger. Every time you choose violence, it costs you something. She continued. I've watched you these past months. You're respected, feared, obeyed. But are you free? Does any of it bring you peace? Dante turned away, moving to the window. Lightning illuminated his silhouette against the glass. There's an innocent woman carrying his child, Lena pressed. An unborn baby who deserves a chance. And there's you, a man who could choose differently, just once. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the storm's fury. Finally, Dante spoke without turning. If I do this, if I find another way, what changes? He still wins. He still lives. No, Lena said, moving to stand beside him at the window. If you choose mercy when you have every right to vengeance, you win. You break the cycle, just once. She hesitated, then added what she'd never dared say before. And you show me who you really are beneath all this. 3 days passed without word from Dante. After their confrontation, he had left the office without explanation, instructing Lena only to reschedule his appointments. On the 4th morning, he returned. He looked different, not physically, but something fundamental had shifted in his bearing, as if he'd shed a weight she hadn't realized he carried. It's done, he said simply, placing a folder on her desk. Inside were documents showing Marco Ricci's assets frozen, his false identity flagged in multiple systems, and evidence of his crimes delivered anonymously to federal authorities. He'll be arrested within the week, Dante explained. The evidence is irrefutable. The woman, Jessica Miller, has been discreetly informed of his true identity and criminal history. Lena studied the papers, emotions conflicting within her. Relief that no blood had been shed. Satisfaction that Marco would face consequences. Concern for the pregnant woman whose life had just imploded. What will happen to her? She asked. I've arranged for her family to receive information about support programs for single mothers. His eyes met Lena's. And an anonymous trust has been established for the child's education. The gesture stunned her. You did that? You were right, he admitted, the words clearly unfamiliar on his tongue. There was another way. He moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. I've lived by certain rules my entire life. Betrayal demands blood. Weakness invites attack. Mercy is for those who can afford it. Turning back to her, his expression was open in a way she'd never seen before. For the first time, I chose differently. It felt like freedom, she suggested. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Like possibility. The air between them changed, the professional boundary that had kept them separated, despite their growing connection, suddenly seemed as insubstantial as smoke. Lena, he said her name like a question. This time, there was no phone call to interrupt them. The evening light painted Dante's office in amber and gold as they stood facing each other. The city spread out below them like a carpet of stars. I should have fired you months ago, he said, his voice gentle despite the words. Lena smiled. For insubordination. For making me question everything I thought I knew. He moved closer. Close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. For making me want things I told myself I couldn't have. Her heart thundered in her chest. What things? Peace, redemption. His hand rose, hesitating just shy of touching her face. You. The confession hung between them, impossible to take back, impossible to ignore. I've crossed every line in my life, he continued, broken every rule that stood between me and what I wanted. Except this one, except you. Why, she whispered. Because you deserve better than my world, better than me. Lena closed the distance between them, her hand finding his, fingers intertwining. Shouldn't that be my choice to make? For a moment, he remained still, fighting a battle she could see in his eyes. Then, with a surrender that felt like victory, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, questioning, then deepened into something that acknowledged all the tension, all the unspoken desire that had built between them for months. When they finally broke apart, Dante rested his forehead against hers. There's no going back from this. I don't want to go back, she said. But forward, that's complicated. My daughter, Sophia, will always come first. he promised, as she should. And your world, the dangers, the enemies, will never touch you or her. His voice hardened with certainty. That I can promise you. She believed him. Against all reason, against all caution, she believed him. Over the following weeks, subtle changes appeared throughout Dante's empire. Meetings that once would have been held in back rooms now took place in conference rooms with lawyers present. Associates known for their violent methods were gradually replaced with those who understood the value of legitimacy. The Henderson development broke ground today, Dante told Lena as they reviewed plans in his office. First phase of construction starts next week. She studied the blueprints. Affordable housing alongside market-rate apartments, community spaces, small business incubators. Nothing like the luxury developments that usually bore the Salvatore name. This is different from your usual projects, she observed. Times change. Priorities change. His hand found hers across the table, a gesture that still felt new and precious. The margins are smaller, but the benefits are more sustainable. Later that evening, in the privacy of his penthouse, he showed her other changes, investments in technology companies, clean energy, education initiatives. You're diversifying, she said, understanding the strategy beneath the moves. I'm transitioning, he corrected. Building something that can last beyond the old ways. They both knew what remained unspoken. That parts of his business still operated in shadows. That complete transformation would take years. That enemies watched for any sign of weakness. But each legitimate success, each legal venture that prospered, created another bridge toward the future he was quietly constructing. One night, as they lay together watching the city lights, Dante confessed his deepest fear. Some would call this weakness, changing the foundation that built everything I have. Lena turned to face him, tracing the line of his jaw with her fingers. It takes more strength to build than to destroy, more courage to change than to remain the same. Is that what I'm doing? Changing. You're evolving, she said, and so is your empire. 6 months into their relationship, Dante surprised Lena by renting out an entire restaurant for the evening. When she arrived, she found the dining area transformed, tables cleared away, soft lighting, a small jazz quartet in the corner. He stood in the center of the empty floor, more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. What's this? She asked. I never saw you dance, he said quietly. Not really. You were always performing for others, for survival. Understanding dawned on her. You want me to dance for you, only if you want to. Not for money, not for work, just because it brings you joy. The quartet began playing something slow and sensual. Lena hesitated only briefly before slipping off her shoes. This wasn't the Diamond Lounge with its desperate energy and hungry eyes. This was intimate, private, a gift freely given. She began to move, letting the music guide her, not the calculated steps of her club routines, but genuine expression, sometimes graceful, sometimes playful, dancing not as Crystal, but as Lena, the woman who had found her strength, her voice, her future. Dante watched her with wonder, seeing not just her beauty, but her freedom, her trust in sharing this moment with him. When the song ended, he approached and held out his hand. Teach me, she laughed. You want to learn to dance? I want to learn to move through the world with you, he said simply. She placed his hand at her waist, took his other in hers, and began guiding him in a simple waltz. He followed her lead. This man who commanded an empire, who had never followed anyone, moving awkwardly at first, then with increasing confidence. By the third song, they had found their rhythm together, creating something new between them. Not perfect, but theirs alone. Morning light filtered through the curtains of Dante's penthouse, as Lena woke to find him already dressed, watching her from the doorway. You're staring, she murmured, stretching. Appreciating, he corrected, approaching to sit beside her. I have something for you. He placed a small velvet box and an envelope on the bed. What's this? She asked, sitting up. Options, he replied. Always options with you. The envelope contained admission papers to the business school she'd been forced to leave years ago, with tuition fully paid, and a schedule that would accommodate her role as both mother and executive. You can finish your degree, Dante said. I've arranged flexible hours at the office. Tears pricked her eyes. Thank you. The other gift is different, he continued, his voice carefully neutral. It comes with no obligations, no expectations. Inside the velvet box lay a key, simple, modern, attached to a platinum ring. It's to my home, he explained. To use whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready. For visits, for longer stays, for whatever future you might want to build. Not a proposal, not yet, but a door opening to possibilities. Lena closed her hand around the key. Our worlds are still so different. They're converging, he pointed out. My business is changing. You're finishing your education. Sophia is thriving. Outside, the city was awakening, a place of both darkness and light, danger and opportunity. Their relationship would never be simple, never be without complications. I can't promise perfection, Dante said, taking her hand, but I can promise protection, honesty, and the best of whatever man I'm becoming because of you. Lena leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. I don't need perfection. I just need us, complicated, imperfect, real. The morning light strengthened, illuminating the room, the bed, their intertwined hands, an empire of light built within the shadows, fragile but enduring.